Okay, today we're talking about how to build a 100% referral-based business, how you can do that for your business. My guest today is Shannon Swift. I'll tell you more about her in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show. Every week, if you've listened before, you know that I talk to smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, lots of great episodes for you. And of course, this episode brought to you by our company, Rise25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast and content marketing. We have the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. We do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution. So if you want to learn more about it, you can contact our team. Go to our website at the email address is support@rise25.com, and the website is rise25.com. All right, Shannon, I'm so excited to have you here today. I know we've been working on getting this set up for quite some time. You are the CEO and founder of Swift HR Solutions. It's a consulting firm that provides strategic HR and talent solutions to early stage and growth stage companies, especially in technology and life sciences sectors. You've got over 25 years of experience in leadership and executive roles, and we'll talk about some of the companies you've worked with, including Zillow and Tableau, some really iconic companies that have come in through your company. And also, as I teased in the beginning, we're going to talk about how to run a business that thrives based on referrals. And that's where you get all of your business, which is a big topic. People love to know how to get more referrals. But first, Shannon, let's start with young Shannon growing up in national parks. That sounds amazing to me. I go through national parks like Yosemite or Glacier Park or something like that, and you see like people living there, and you're like, wait, people get to live here? This looks amazing. And your father was, I guess, a ranger, a government employee, and you're growing up in national parks. Tell me what that was like.
Well, it was amazing, and I was born at the Grand Canyon, and so that started my career with the Park Service. We moved to Clay Lake Ranger Station when I was 1.5. My dad was there through my high school years, and so I had a million tourists coming through my front yard every year from all over the world. So we would track license plates in the campground, and we had every state, every province, and we'd meet people from all over the world. And probably the biggest frustration was that I was not allowed to set up a lemonade stand. I had all these people right there in front of my door to my house, and my father was a rule-abiding government official and would not allow me to set up a money-making scheme, which was a heartbreak for me.
Those poor, thirsty tourists who could have
Exactly.
used a glass of fresh
Exactly.
lemonade, so depriving them. Jeez, that must have been so frustrating. That's great. Let's talk a bit about how you got into the world of HR. So first of all, how'd you get interested in this as a topic, as a field, as a profession?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Washington and studied psychology, and then I got hooked into some business classes and started just really devouring those. And so when I graduated, it was psychology and business, and I got into my first role with a national home infusion therapy company that was based out of Orange County, and took over. They were decentralizing all of the human resources and the payroll for across their 70 branches nationally. So I got to train with this amazing HR group, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is me. And they said to me at that point, well, the branch will never be big enough to support a full-time role. So if you want to do that, you'll have to move down to California. I was in Washington, and so I said, that's not happening. And then the national company was bought by Baxter, and they started kind of rolling out all of the kind of merging all of the branches. And in the 11th hour, I was waiting to be let go, and we were acquired by Children's Hospital in Seattle. They had a for-profit arm that most people don't know about. So we were a wholly owned for-profit subsidiary of the nonprofit hospital. And so it was just the most amazing career jump for me, because all of a sudden we had nothing and we got to build this business from the ground up. I got to lay the initial HR foundation, and I'd learned from this amazing group. So that kind of started my whole journey with startups startups in particular. Being able to be one of the first, I was employee number 8, and we grew to 110, and I was one of 5 people leading the company when I left 8 years later. And so it was just this really phenomenal opportunity that kind of set the stage, I think, for my passion around that early stage growth. My husband's company had 35 people and used to call me all the time for HR questions. And so I realized that there was a need for that earliest stage expertise. And so that really kind of set the stage for my HR journey.
And you had the vision or the idea to start your company. I don't know how far in advance it was, but you were planning towards it for a while by the time you started it. And you also had been working with a lot of different companies by the time you started your company. So it wasn't something you started straight out of school. So talk a little bit about what inspired that. Like why? Because it's tough to go from probably well compensated executive position, working for different companies. You're in the Seattle area. There's lots of startups that you could work for. What inspired you to go down the path of entrepreneurship?
Well, I think that first experience that I had out of college kind of made me always realize I needed a plan B. So, I thought like my dad, I was just going to have this job forever. And so when, 8 months in, all of a sudden I was told, you're not going to have a role. I was like, okay, what's my plan B? And my plan B at that point was, hey, it seems like, my husband's at this company that calls me for help. There must be other small companies I could get, I had a cell phone and a pager, and I thought I could just, be multiple companies' HR person. At that point, I was on the board of the HR Association here, and at a board meeting, I was talking with a friend who had just joined a firm, and I said, "Well, what do you do?" And she said, "Oh, we work with small companies that don't have an HR department." And I was like, that was what I was going to do. I ended up going on board and selling outsourced HR services for them. So I saw the need. The company would get 6 clients a year, and when I left 2 years later, we had 6 companies every month that were coming in.
Wow.
So I built a referral network. Just started with cold calling and really building relationships, and then I was recruited to start the Seattle office for a professional employer organization called TriNet in its early days, and so had the first successful branch office here. And so I saw what I liked about both of those models, and definitely what I and my clients didn't like about them. And so I ended up going back in-house with a startup that had 12 employees, software company. We grew to 150. I realized then that when a company gets to 150, I develop an eye twitch, like literally an eye twitch. And so like, okay, I know my lane.
Like, this is not me.
So I'm like 2 to 150 employees. That's my lane. And so I was able to then go onto a publicly traded pharmaceutical company that had 60 people, no HR foundation at all. And so that was kind of the launch for my starting Swift HR Solutions, was realizing that even a publicly traded company has not done a good job of laying a solid HR foundation. And I'd had the opportunity to do that multiple times. And so it's really my passion is laying that earliest foundation that allows a company to scale without being distracted by HR. So it was definitely scary jumping in, but I had my first client 6 weeks before we started.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. How did that happen?
That was just amazing. So I was down to I'd given 3 months notice at my last company that I was in-house, which by the way was too long to give of notice, but I was
laying a long time.
Laying their foundation,
like overly generous,
setting myself up for success. And so I got a call 6 weeks. I was going to take a month off then and then start my company. And so 6 weeks before I was going to start, my last 2 weeks in-house, I got a call from an entrepreneur, and he was with a venture firm here as an entrepreneur in residence. They had just bought a company with 70 people. He said, "I don't see any sign of HR. I'm scared to death about what I don't know. I heard you're hanging your shingle. Can you come help me?" And so in my hard sales method, I said, "Well, I'm not going to be available for 6 weeks. It sounds like you need somebody right away." He said, No, it's been like this 3 or 4 years. I can wait another month." And he was actually the one that set my model. I hadn't even really thought about it. I was going to take my last 2 weeks and then just take a month and decompress. And he said, "How about if you give me every Monday, and if I call you and email you throughout the week, you take my calls and emails, and I'll pay you so much per month." And I love that model. So it built in my 4 weeks of vacation a year, because I was my husband was a stay-at-home dad. and our daughter was about 3.5 when I started the company. So I had committed to them that I was going to take time off at 4 weeks a year. And so our clients would pay for 48 weeks and they were 52 in a year. So that was just kind of built in. And then also, I didn't want to spend my time tracking time. And I didn't want my clients to hesitate to pick up the phone or shoot me an email. And so that model just immediately resonated for me. And we still, 21 years later, have that same model. We scale up and down now, but that dedicated day a week model is how we started. And most of our business is at that level.
Which is now usually referred to as fractional, right? Was that a term that
Exactly.
was used back then?
Yeah, it was not used back then. And I think it was, the only fractional role that I was seeing back then was I'm sorry, it was CFOs. And so there was a CFO group here that I networked with, and so we really did a lot of work together around town. So we had HR and finance kind of arm in arm, but fractional was really a concept that people didn't understand, and so for me. The other thing that was really great was that we look and feel like our client. And so we have an email extension, a phone extension. Our clients forget that we're not working just with them. And so we would attend, multiple holiday parties, summer picnics. We're part of the team. I have so much client swag. So it's like we're part of the team. We get
Wear
all
a
the
different
things.
t-shirt each day of the week. So
Yeah.
Monday, I got to put on this
I've got
shirt. Tuesday, got to
I've
put on
got
this.
some collector's items from swag of early companies, and so yeah, Zillow. I've got the earliest swag from Zillow, and so it's been fun to have that we're kind of part of the company, but we're also part of other companies at the same time.
So before we get into talking about referrals, then let me ask you, how do you avoid under that model turning into something more? Like, how do you draw the line when they're sending you a lot of emails and sending you a lot of voice messages and asking questions, and it's not Monday, it's throughout the week? How do you
Yeah.
draw the line there?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we mentally think about it is we are part of that team. And so just like when you've got your dedicated time when you're working on certain projects and you've got timelines and deadlines to meet and you've got meetings that you're in. But throughout, it's like when you get out of a meeting, you check your phone and email. Instead of getting phone and email messages from one company and all the employees, we're getting it from multiple. And
Hmm.
so it all comes down to just managing expectations and prioritizing. I think also compartmentalizing is a huge part of our role that we have to like, okay, we're sitting with this company and this leadership team and this culture and values and this benefits plan and these policies, and then we get a phone call or an email from another one, and we just immediately switch gears, and now we're right there, and then we
Hmm.
come back again. So it's definitely not for everyone, and our days are really intense. But one of the things that I love, and I think my team really loves, is making every client feel like we're only working with them, and it's kind of a little bit of a game that we want them to forget that anybody that we're working with anybody but them.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask you about this idea of a referral only business. So first of all, define that for me. Does that mean that you don't do any advertising?
That's
You
right.
don't do
Yeah.
any other sorts of things? Okay, that seems like
Yeah.
a point of
So
pride.
yeah, so huge. And I think I didn't really appreciate early on just what a gift it was that basically every experience that I had that led before I started this business was leading into this being a referral only business. So our first client, like I said, came 6 weeks before we started. That was just through my network. Somebody heard that somebody needed help, and they're like, "Hey, I think Shannon's going to start this thing." And I was known in the venture community already because of the other two roles that I had, the other outsourcing models. And so the relationships that I built over all of the years leading up to starting the business really came through. And I think one thing that I learned is that you never know when somebody is going to pop up in your world down the line. Just be nice to everybody, help everybody, always be respectful to people. I mean, I have people that I've terminated in the past that went on to start companies and reach out and have us work with them.
Hmm.
And I was like, but I fired you. And they're like, well, I needed
You
to be
must have done it
fired.
in a nice
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
And so I think, my second client was a former president that I worked with in-house. My third one was my third and fourth came through volunteer work that I've done. I've always been on volunteer roles, and that's another thing. I think that I was on the Human Resource Association board for 10 years, led that as the president, and then I was on the Northwest Entrepreneur Network, and I was the chair of that for 2 years. So I think, and then getting into entrepreneur organization and volunteering there. So service is my first value, and my values are Swift, SWIFT. And so the
Oh,
S is
perfect.
service. And so I think all of those volunteer opportunities, just being able and that kind of goes back to my park service roots, right? It's like we were there to make sure that the tourists had an amazing experience. And so that's kind of the approach that I've always had with my roles internally, and as well as just networking with people as wherever I can serve. So I think all of that kind of came back. And as I look back at our 750 plus clients that we've had over the years, and where they've come from, and kind of the pockets, it's a lot of just, we see an opportunity for a win-win, which is the W in Swift. And if a company needs a resource and we know somebody that's really fantastic, and we refer them over, we never have expectations, and so it just seems to always just come back. So just doing the right thing for people, trying to solve problems, and connect people where it makes sense to, and it comes back around. And so yeah, so it's been just amazing to see how we've built this organization really without a marketing and advertising budget.
So, let me just kind of summarize what you said there. So, keeping in touch with people is a priority. So, in terms of like building this referral program, keeping in touch with
Relationships.
people is a
Yeah.
top thing, priority. Making it a win-win, referring other people when you see opportunities to do so, getting involved in service, so serving on boards, volunteering, things like that. What else? What else do you do in order to generate referrals?
Yeah, I think just, I mean, relationships, and always giving time. I mean, there, and it comes back to my passion, which is a big part of it. I love my field that I've chosen. I love to play with early stage. For me, it's kind of the nexus of, smart people doing cool stuff in a fast pace. And so
So,
whenever I
staying in
have
your lane, I guess, might be another
yeah,
priority.
I think so. Knowing
Yeah,
knowing
knowing
where
your lane.
you really thrive. But for
Right.
me, whenever there's an incubator, there, startups, I mean, I never hesitate to jump when somebody asks me to come in and talk with them about setting up HR, or building, how do you set your culture and values in an intentional way? What are the things that companies need to think about at that earliest stage? Co-founder relationships. I never hesitate to take a meeting with anybody that wants to pick my brain. I have other HR folks that have wanted to start a business like what we have, or other functional areas that have said, how did you do this? And I never hesitate to be very, open and transparent, and have those conversations. So for me, it's just yeah, just seeking to serve without expectations of anything in return.
I'm curious how the evolution of technology has affected you. It's been 20 plus years since you
Oh my
started your
gosh.
company. I had as guest on this podcast, actually a friend of mine, one of the co-founders of Gusto, which is one of those
Ah,
companies out there that
we
has
work with them
been,
all the time.
yeah, that has been kind of trying to streamline a very complex area. So how's that affected the clients that you work with and the way that you do the
Yeah.
work that you do?
Well, I'll tell you is that it's made us able to do a lot more in a much shorter period of time. So, I mean, just to give you an example, so I worked with Zillow from 2 employees to 140, and I was there Mondays and Wednesdays through my company, and I had a Tuesday client and a Thursday client at the same time. So every Monday morning, I would come in and the first thing I would do every Monday was onboarding for whoever was starting. It might be 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, all starting one day, and that involved sitting there watching them fill out forms. I would have to go and copy their I-9 forms and their documentation and fill out that form, and everything was very, very manual. And it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but now when we show up, everything's already online. So Gusto is a great example. Like we work with them, a huge majority of our clients. I think Rippling is a increasing area now, but Gusto is definitely one of the largest providers for our demographic of client. And so, when we do the onboarding now, we get to jump right into the good stuff. What's the history of the company? What's our acronym? What's the org chart look like? What's the business and how do you fit into it? We don't have to sit there and watch people filling out forms anymore. And just the manual paperwork, and doing things in duplicate. And I mean, I cringe now thinking about how much time I spent in a week just on just manual physical paperwork. So
Yeah.
I would say that's just like been such a gift that we get to not have to spend our time there anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like an expectation now. We're all so used to these types of streamlined onboardings with different companies that we might hire or do business with that, if someone comes to us and hands us a piece of paper, then we have to fill out a bunch of information that was found elsewhere, whether
Yeah.
it's in dentist's office or something
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
or school, it just drives me crazy as well.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's made our lives a lot better in the HR world.
You have different divisions to your company, so I'm curious about that. You have Swift Talent, Swift HR, Swift Leadership. Talk a little bit about the differences between those and why you delineate it in that way.
Yeah. So, and I have to tell you, I was Smith, and so I married Swift. So I think that was one of the best decisions I ever made was marrying my husband with that name.
Because Smith would have been
So
just Smith HR too
Smith would
boring.
not have been as
Yeah,
sexy. Definitely
yeah.
not. So we started with Swift HR On-Site. That was actually what we called our business line. And then we started getting a lot. We would just see on the recruiting side the fees that our clients were paying, and we're working with a lot of startups, and they don't have big budgets. And so one of my team came to me, and I think one of the attributes I'll say about myself as a leader is that I'm always open to whatever somebody has as an idea, and I usually will give it a predefined period of time, and it's most often a year. I'll say, okay, let's try this for a year, and then we'll just kind of like touch base, see how it's working. Do we want to continue or kill it? And so one of my team came and said, okay, I think we're missing an opportunity to serve our clients, and we should be offering recruiting services. And I said, oh, I just, the big fees and the percentage of payroll, which doesn't align with their client. And so they said, no, I think we should mirror our model on the HR side. So and I was like, okay, if we can make the numbers work, let's do this. And so we started in about 2016. We started our current iteration of Swift Talent, which is a recruiter that looks and feels like their client's employee. So they have an email extension, a phone extension. They're representing the employment brand and doing one point of contact. So our model is always very seasoned HR folks, very seasoned corporate recruiters. So we don't have junior people that are jumping in needing a lot of support. And so the overhead was relatively low, and so the model was incredible. So we have a flat monthly fee. They look and feel like part of the client's team. There's a small success fee based on the level of position that they fill, and we have filled entire teams of fast-growing companies. The other really nice thing about it was, as an internal HR person, when we stopped hiring, we had to let our recruiters go, and that was horrible, right? It's like we have to let them go, and with our service, you can just turn it on and off, and so. We fill a bunch of positions, the client turns it off, and then they close another contract or another round of funding, and boom, they turn it back on, and here we come back again.
Hmm.
So that's our Swift Talent side, and we've got a handful. It's very boutique-ish. We're not trying to compete with anybody on a big scale, but we're doing a really great job for our clients. And then the leadership was another one of my Swifties that had a passion for. We're all generalists, and we all have our areas of passion. So I love culture and values. That Swiftie was really into building teams and recruitment. And then the other business line is Swift Leadership. And I have just this amazing senior level HR generalist, but she is also a content designer and a facilitator. And she's hysterical on top of it. She's very laugh out loud funny. And so she started putting together workshops for us and for our clients. And so we have a new manager development one that's actually coming up on October 3rd. And so that's been really, really exciting just to see how we're able to offer very high quality leadership development as our clients grow. So they start out with just a core team, and then as they grow around 50 to 60, 70 employees, they start to promote their stars. And now we're able to just kind of grow with them.
Mm.
So that's been kind of just the iteration, is just me being open to whatever the team comes up with, and then say, okay, does it fit our culture and values and our philosophies around how we operate? And does it make sense for the client and for us?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been my approach to adding different business lines.
And I want to ask you about how you deliberately structured those culture and how you determined the values. And I guess related to that, I'm looking over your headcount here, and you have very few men, almost all women working for you. So talk a little bit about that choice.
Well, and that's been a source of frustration actually for us over the years. And I think the first couple of men that I looked to add to the team were just people that I knew and had really respected. One was my mentor, actually. When I first got into HR, he was the VP of HR at a company, and I would reach out to him and say, "Oh my gosh, I've got this situation. What do I do?" And he'd say, "Wow, what are you going to do about that?" So years later, he came back and he said, I think I want to join your team. I want to do what you do." And I was thrilled. I was like, "Oh my
Wow.
gosh, not only am
Hiring
I
your
getting
mentor.
getting a
Yeah.
guy, but I'm getting my mentor to come on board." And so we had a client for him right away. And the day before he was to start with the client, he called and he realized the amount of rolling up sleeves that he was going to have to do. And so we are very full scale. So we've been at the VP level in the boardroom, but we also roll up our sleeves and get the work done because we're working with small companies, right? And so, I mean, you wear lots of hats when you're in a startup. And he was like, I don't think I can get back down into that tactical granular level. Like I've been at this
Mm.
VP level. So I think one of the things that we have discovered over time, and we have had a couple of guys, amazing guys on our team. Both have retired now, and we start with a lot of experience. And so the guys that we have had on the team really have been, they've been further along in their careers, and so they chose to kind of step back when they started having grandchildren.
Mm.
And so that's been a challenge for us. I will also say, and this is probably a stereotype, but I think that my team juggles a lot. I mean, we are, like I said, that compartmentalization, jumping in and out of things, multitasking is maybe not as well served for the male population.
Mm.
So as
Yeah.
much, I mean, and
Oh yeah. I say
again,
it all the time. If you want something done, give it to a busy mom to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
we are in touch with both of our retired Swifties that like to do leadership, and so we'll pull them in to do a workshop or sometimes an investigation or due diligence. And then we have a really amazing guy that just joined our team recently that's totally one of us. I mean, he's thriving.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the impact of COVID because
Mm.
that affected so many companies. You're in Seattle area, got a lot of technology companies in that area. How did it affect your clients and how did it affect you as a company? Because you had to deal with both at the same time.
Yeah, it actually started out it started out feeling very much like a doom and gloom. So our revenue dropped 30% in April. It went down 40% in May.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden we started just completely thriving. And I think what happened was I mentioned before our core offering was Swift HR Onsite. We just basically dropped the onsite because most of our clients were not.
Yeah, I was
And
going to ask about
so
that. Yeah.
so we
Like
just
you
became we
don't need it
became
anymore.
Swift HR instead of
Yeah.
Swift HR on site, which was pretty easy to do. Just drop that off of there.
Yeah. Just take a
But
Sharpie and write over everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
But most of our, I mean, the vast majority of our clients were in person, and so we had a physical location, Seattle area, and then Portland. And so when COVID started, we had one Swiftie that had wanted to be virtual, and she announced it like back in early 2019. She said by October, we have this teched out trailer, and we want to be on the road. We're empty nesters, and I can serve clients from anywhere, and I just want virtual clients. So for me, I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. I'm going to make sure that your plate is full of just virtual companies. And so she was. And so they set out on the road in October of 2019. So when COVID started, our team immediately reached out and said, "Oh my gosh." And we had all this experience from her. And so we were able to really quickly pivot. On the leadership side, Kendra, our facilitator and content designer, immediately wrote a module for managing remote teams. And so we just kind of like immediately were like, okay, what do people need and how can we serve them? But then what was really exciting was I started getting calls from former clients that had moved from other parts of the country, and they're like, "Hey, Shannon, I'm in Cleveland. Can you help me?" And I was like, "Are you in the office?" "Oh no, we're remote." yep, we can help. And then, so we just kind of like went from there. I also in 2021 acquired a company that was in Colorado. And so that gave me a couple of folks and clients in Colorado as well as Florida. And so from there, we just, again, I'm just open to the possibilities, right? I don't shut any ideas down. And so we now just have continued to expand carefully in terms of culture and values on our own team. And so we have, just this very like-minded group now in Connecticut and New York City and Michigan and Colorado and Florida. And so and of course, Portland, we have a couple of folks there as well. And so it's just it turned out to be just a huge catalyst for our growth in that we were now able to be anywhere. And it's been a lot of fun for the team, I think, a lot of challenges and trying to figure out how to make it work. And we do 3 events for our team. We bring everybody in for the summer picnic here, and then we do virtual events for our team throughout. Or we weave now that we're back in person, we weave the remote team into our team events.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
so
you
it's
went from
been really
before
fun.
COVID to offices in Seattle and Portland, and now I'm
Yep,
looking at your website. We have New York, we have
yep.
Fort Myers, Florida, we have Denver,
Connecticut.
Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, Connecticut, Michigan, all over the place.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really fun, really fun. For our holiday party last year, we did a charcuterie contest physically for the people that were in the Seattle area and at a winery. And then the remote team we sent them borderies, which is, if you haven't heard of those, they're really cool charcuterie boards that you send out. And so all of my remote team got those and a bottle of wine. And so they were they were on Zoom, and so we were walking them around. They became the judges for the charcuterie contest. And so we found a way to weave them in, and I've got already an idea for this holiday party coming up. But I think that's been one of the fun things for me is figuring out like how do we bring everybody all together when we're not all together.
Yeah. And you also had another iconic company that came through your company was Tableau Software. You were their first
Yeah.
outsourced HR.
Yeah, so Tableau had just moved up here they were started in Stanford and they had just moved up to Seattle. And I want to say it was probably 2007. And so one of my Swifties joined them. They reached out because they had a full-time position open right away, as did Zillow. And they said, we don't want to be stalled while we're looking for the person. And as well, they wanted to have some expertise in terms of that technical screen when they did find the right person. And so we jumped in and helped them lay out their executive. We did an executive culture audit, so we helped them articulate their values, and then we actually helped them to determine who was the best full time fit. So we were there for I think it was like 4 or 5 months until we found the right person, and then we transitioned over to them and dropped off. And so, yeah, so that's, being able to come in at that earliest stage when there's nothing broken and just make sure that it stays that way is really kind
Yeah.
of one of the biggest reasons we exist.
And by the way, you should have trademarked that term, Swifties, early
I
on.
know,
Should have just
I
grabbed it.
know. We said we just let Taylor have. We've been around longer than she has.
Oh, she heard it and she was like, "That's great. I got to use that. I'm going to use that term." Well, this has been
Uh-oh,
great,
I'm getting
Shannon.
a visitor in my background.
It's totally fine. You got a cat running around your behind your shoulders here. I want to wrap up with my last question, which is my gratitude question. I'm a big fan of giving our guests a little bit of space at the end here to acknowledge anyone, thank anyone who's been maybe a peer, maybe a contemporary, maybe a key client who's been there with you through the journey. Anyone you want to shout out and recognize?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say thank you to my husband just because he was a stay-at-home husband and could have immediately shut down. He never had a doubt that this was going to succeed, and so I think I had the freedom to really start Swift HR Solutions and explore that. But my biggest gratitude goes out to my very first client, and the fact that he came to me and we had a 20th anniversary celebration, and he was there. I made sure that he was going to be able to be there, and I just called him out because I think people say, wow, this is such a great model and you were so far ahead of your time. And everything was just really thought out. But it really kind of goes back to having my first client set my model. Like, how fortunate was I? And so just to have that feedback from him and what he needed as an entrepreneur, and to be able to align our business to the client's need. And he's been a resource. He's been a client of ours multiple times. In fact, he just came back for a third time, and we're working with him again. And he has just been such a pivotal role in our entire history. And I'm super grateful to him, and just being able to have him be vested in our success all these years has just been really amazing.
Yeah, I think back on when I started my first company, which was my law firm. I was an attorney practicing law, and those first few people that take a risk on you when you've got nothing, it's such a boost of confidence when you're just getting started.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Shannon, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and learn more about what you guys are doing? And I know you have this new Swift Start HR, which is your new offering for companies that have fewer than 15 employees. So tell us about that as well.
Yeah, so we had initially, I'll go back to our early days in 2005. We had a Swift HR in a box product, which was literally like a photo album quality box that had different binders in it, and it came with support from a Swiftie. And it was for companies that were just hiring their first employees. And I knew when companies like Gusto were coming along that was going to be obsolete. And what hasn't been obsolete, though, is what kind of caused us to reimagine that into Swift Start HR. And swiftstarthr.com will take you to our site. But it's a collection of 50 documents, templates, resources that are specifically for that earliest stage, and has everything that a company needs to self-manage that HR function. It comes with support from a Swift HR Ops Swiftie. And again, going back to my very first client, you can't just give this to me and walk away. You need to stick around and hold my hand. And so we provide support. It's a 6-month subscription, super cost effective for small companies. And so everything's delivered online in a portal, and there's Zoom meetings with their dedicated Swiftie that comes with it. So we're really excited about that. We just had a purchase from New York. I have no idea where it came from. So I think the referral only is going to shift now as we enter we're going to be entering our 22nd year of business. But it's super exciting to see people finding us now, finding that product online. And let's see, what else did you ask me? Where can you find us?
Yeah, where can people go? Website?
SwiftHRsolutions.com has all of our business lines on it. And then and I'm on LinkedIn, and I would love to link with anybody that wants to chat about HR. I'm always a resource for entrepreneurs before they need us. I'm a huge relationship person, and I love answering questions and providing input and advice wherever somebody wants it.
Excellent, Shannon. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Take care, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.